Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? Believe it or not, there are differences of opinion in terms of the inclusion and appropriateness of and the methods and ways we use various elements in role-playing games. And one of those elements is asking questions. Do we do it or not? How do we do it? And it's my contention that when we ask questions in a role-playing game, it's no different than how we normally navigate life. However, I'll get to that. There are various ways or schools of thought in terms of how we ask questions or don't ask questions. And, first and foremost, none of these are wrong or bad. They just might be wrong or bad or not useful for the experience that you want to have. So it can vary. Now, the first method of asking questions that we see very often is where the players ask the game master directly. I ask Eloy, is there a door? What does that door look like it's made out of? How big is it? Is there a log around? Does it look like a couple of us can pick that log up? Can we pick it up? Can we bash the door down with it? And this kind of play tends to be very 20 questions. It tends to be very tactical, and it tends to be very, very out of character. There may be many reasons why players choose to engage in this. It could just be a culture of play where the players don't insert anything. They're not to assume the existence of anything in the environment. And also where, once again, they're kind of detached from their characters, and it's more tactical. And this can be very fun. It's not necessarily my first choice, but it can be really fun if you like that. On the other end of the spectrum, asking questions can be very minimal or almost anathema, where you don't ask them. And it's much preferred that if you want a certain object or situation or something to be in the imagined situation, that you just go ahead and insert it. And very often, in talking to people that prefer this way, it's because they want to keep the action moving. They don't want to have to stop and ask, well, gosh, is there this? They want to be able to pick that object up or use whatever this item is or situation is, or maybe even an NPC and move on. Sometimes it's more for the intentional creation of the story, and sometimes it's just to keep the action rolling, which, once again, is kind of an intentional creation of a story. And it tends to not happen at all. Clearly that there's a certain level of where, inserting items in the environment that should be there, the classic, you're in a bar, there should be glasses, hanging around, there should be drinks, there should be coasters, all that sort of stuff. We all have our own threshold of where that doesn't impinge upon another style of play. And that threshold can vary, but that's not really important for the sake of this video. In the middle, and you can see where my preference lies, I like to ask questions in character, but I look at it this way. I ask questions all day long without opening my mouth in real life. I look in this direction and that direction, and I'm looking. What do I see? What's actually there? I listen. What do I hear? Once again, what's there? I can feel objects and can tell a lot more about this table I'm sitting at than I could by just looking at it. I can, tell the density of the wood and how heavy it is and all that sort of thing, etc. But I'm not in this imagined situation. So I have to ask the game master. How do I ask them? Well, I ask them in character. I look and I feel the table and see, how heavy does this seem? What does this seem to be made out of? How hard is it? I examine the door and just see what kind of wood does this seem to be made of. I look around, I want to break this door down, so I'm looking around for a log or something that looks big enough that we might be able to batter this thing down with. So I'm broadcasting my intention to the game master. So I'm using the game master as my senses by asking through the lens of my character, describing my character looking, describing what my character is looking for, what kind of object they're looking for, why are they looking for it, and if they're examining an object, what are they trying to determine, and a lot of times why they're trying to determine it. I'm giving the game master, that look into my intention so they know what to tell me. That we're not playing a game of 20 questions, that can devolve into really, really fast. And, so for me, that becomes a much more immersive in-character experience. When I have to insert too much into the scene, then that throws me out of character. This can even come down to, matters of judgment. Does it look like I can make a jump from this building to that building? And once again, in real life, I'm going to look. I can judge the distance, kind of. And knowing me, if it's more than 6 feet, I know Ivan is probably going to die if he tries to make that jump from one building to another. But I'm not there. So I'm relying upon the game master to be the judgment of the character in that moment. Not as a may I, or asking for permission, but gosh, well, I would be able to make that intelligent decision myself, but I'm not there, so I'm going to have the game master kind of at least give me an inkling. What do I think based upon me being a rational human being, knowing my own limitations in that situation as that other character? Is that confusing yet? But you know what I mean. So that's the style of question asking that I prefer, and that's why I tend to prefer it, because once again, it feels very in character, and it feels like I'm actually using my senses, my judgment to do these things. If you like those other, styles, that's fine. If I try to ask questions, if I ask too many questions out of character, well, then once again, it feels like I'm not really my character. It feels like we're playing a tactical exercise. If I insert too much stuff, like, yeah, I totally think I can make that jump from this building to the other building, well, now it just feels like I'm creating a story, which, once again, is not why I'm there. Your mileage may vary. What's your take on questions? That's a question,